Thank you.
We'll go to Adam Kinzinger of Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. I appreciate your service to your country. I also thank, soldiers all around the globe for their service to their country, and especially for those that were involved in this incident. One of the things soldiers and airmen like I am are always taught is that your country will always be there. As I've said earlier, that your country will move heaven and earth to ensure that you'll be protected, to ensure that if you find yourself under attack, they'll come and get you. I heard a colleague earlier mention that, we need answers. This isn't about exploiting this for political gain, somehow implying that, our side of the aisle is just interested in embarrassing the administration and just gaining in politics here. I take a huge exception to that, and I have to get this on the record, because when 4 Americans die, and I see that there was 7 hours between a first and a second attack, and I know that there were military assets nearby that within 7 hours could have responded. And I hear the Department of Defense even come out and say, well, we never could have made it by the 7th hour, but they had no idea that attack was coming. And hopefully they didn't know that second attack was coming, or there'd be a whole line of questions about why there weren't assets in place in the first place. But when I hear that, it really bothers me, because my belief as an airman, as a pilot myself, and as just a member of the military, is that when people die and when there's not a serious military response, I would hope that if I was in that situation, the House Foreign Affairs Committees would keep having hearings for a year or two until they found out what really happened. So I think that's important. You also mentioned earlier, too, that it doesn't really I don't know what you meant, but you said it really doesn't matter who did it, just that it was done, it was terrorism. I think it does matter. I think we need answers on that, because ultimately it gives us a blueprint on who we need to kill or capture, which I think is very important, and I hope that that's done. I had another colleague earlier that asked you if there was any force nearby that could have responded between the beginning of the attack and by the time Ambassador Stevens was killed, and you said no, and that's probably true. There was about a 90-minute lag. Again, there were 3 other Americans that died, some of the 7 hours later. You also mentioned that the nearest military assets were in Djibouti. I've been to Djibouti as a congressman. It's a important base, and I appreciate that. Are you familiar with Aviano Air Base, sir?
I am, sir. And if I said the reason I cited Djibouti is that is what the Defense Department has told me. So that is not. I am.
Okay, so it's the defense. I got it. I'm sure they're aware of Aviano as well.
Yes, sir.
But it's 1,049 miles away from Benghazi,
right.
Direct flight. And those are F-16s, by the way. They can kind of haul. Dallas to Washington, which you mentioned, I think is 1,330 miles away. So actually Aviano is closer, and there's something we can do called a show of force, in which a plane comes in, flies very low, and scatters an enemy. And I've always wondered why in 8 hours we couldn't have made that happen. Now, the question on the SST, you made the decision to terminate the SST, I believe, and that was as of August 2012. Now, you testified today, I believe, that there was a replacement to the SST, correct? So that was not a loss of capacity.
That is correct. The State Department replaced the capacities, and 6 of the billets that were part of the 16 remained in country.
And they were based out of Tripoli.
They were based in Tripoli.
Ultimately responded to Benghazi. So was there movement during the attacks from the replacement team to Benghazi?
That is, yes, sir, they did.
And how did they get there? Did they charter an aircraft?
Charter an aircraft.
Didn't we have a DC-3 that they could have hopped on?
No, the DC-3 was no longer there, but the DC-3 was never based in Tripoli. The DC-3 was based in Malta. And so when we would have had, it was, I think.
But our prior SST would have utilized that DC-3,
no, sir.
Correct? Who would have? Who's flying that? Not who's flying it, but what are we using it for?
The DC-3, in effect, ran a shuttle between the commercial airport in Malta and Tripoli before there was any commercial airline service established. So once commercial airline service was established, U.S. government personnel moved between Malta.
So we had to charter an aircraft to get that replacement team into Benghazi. Now, how long did that take, do you know?
I can look at the.
Okay, it took X amount of
timeline.
time, but they were able to respond in time, and or they were able to respond. No, definitely not. Probably in time.
Faster than.
It's interesting that chartering an aircraft can actually be done faster than the military can have an aircraft on alert and respond to Benghazi in a short amount of time with F-16 power. So I thought that was interesting. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.